Hello, everyone. Welcome to a special edition of Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Dan.
Today, we're going to do some speculation about the Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the future of the Sony Spider-Man franchise.
Yeah, spectacular speculation.
Yes, indeed. So, not only have we seen the Amazing Spider-Man 2 trailer, which, by the way, I still am not happy with that title, but whatever. Not only have we seen the trailer now for the movie, but we've also gotten this news that apparently Sony is planning to go ahead with some villain movies. We're going to be talking about that, and if that seems like a viable thing, or at the very least something that they should have announced this early. and we're going to move forward and talk about all the stuff that we think might happen in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and possibly even beyond. So, Dan, why don't we start with you? How stoked are you for that trailer?
I think it looks awesome. I was very pleased with it. I loved all the spectacular Spider-Man animated series ideas that are sort of pulled from there. One of the ideas that they used in the first movie was sort of like the villains coming from Oscorp and being created by that, and I think that works really well because it's the whole sort of theme of power being misused irresponsibly. Norman Osborn kind of just does whatever he wants with the power that he has with this giant corporation. I think that works really well, having all the villains be born out of that, and that's what it looks like they're doing in this one, which is very cool. I think Harry being the Goblin first works. I've seen it done well before, and I'm not one of the people that's upset about that necessarily. So yeah, I mean, everything that I saw in there was cool. There was some cool little Easter eggs, like the Doc Ock arms and the Vulture wings I liked. What did you think about it?
I was surprised that they gave us as much as they did right out the gate. I mean, there's so much in that trailer. I didn't figure if they were doing Goblin, they'd tell us right away which one it was. It seems pretty clear to me from that trailer. I guess it's possible that it's not that, but that's sure what it looks like. I mean, we had a Norman Osborn sick in a bed talking to Harry, and the one little glimpse we got of the guy on the Goblin Glider sure looked like Harry to me. I was surprised we got that. I was surprised that they're telling us where all the villains are coming from this early, or at least where all the tech for the villains is coming from this early, and that there's kind of a sense that perhaps even Peter's dad knew about all that like this tech for all these villains has existed for a long time, and he knew that Oscorp was planning something. So when he has that line where he's like, Oscorp is planning something terrible, I assume it's like make an army of supervillains or something.
Yeah, I get the sense that it's something to the degree of Harry says changing the world, and I think that'll play into a little bit more of my speculation about what they're going to do with the Sinister Six. But it makes sense that Norman Osborn, I think, as an antagonist for Peter Parker, is looking at the bigger picture. Because I mean, when you think about the one flaw in what Spider-Man does, it's well, he goes around and saves people in this city, but in the big picture, what is he really doing? How is he really affecting things? If you're looking at it from a wider sense, he's not doing all that much to change the world other than improving the everyday lives of people, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. But from a guy like Norman Osborn, who runs a huge multinational corporation, that's the way he would sort of view it,
Well, and you've also got that classic thing of the superhero affecting things in ways that he isn't aware of initially or perceives at all.
That's a classic Spider-Man thing.
This idea that Spider-Man has all this power and he does his best with it, but if he had never shown up in the first place, some of these other people might not show up and try to take the kind of power that they perceive him to have. Once you show up and you're the one guy running around with superpowers, it's a game changer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're challenging anyone who might want to take power and see you as this big threat when all you're trying to do is stop petty theft and things.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that'll all be very interesting, I think. I think Harry being the Goblin first and him possibly not surviving this movie or his life sort of being ruined by that experience will give Norman Osborn a deep hatred and needed motivation for not liking Spider-Man that was absent from the Raimi movies pretty much entirely.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't think we have enough information to go on with what's going on with Norman, because the fact that we saw him in a hospital bed tips me off to think that maybe he gets killed in this movie.
I don't think he's going to get killed because Christopher said that there's plans for him in the third movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I think it's very likely that we'll get the. I don't know if they're going to do Death to Gwen Stacy exactly, but the Goblin does not survive that story in the comics, so I'm sort of expecting Harry to die, or at least like his life be ruined. Because in the comics, Peter is sort of responsible in some way for Harry Osborn getting addicted to drugs and his life spiraling down into like uh, terribleness, I guess, because he sort of comes between Harry and Mary Jane. That's why Norman blames Peter personally for that sort of thing. Not that it's directly his fault, but Norman doesn't like to take responsibility for anything. He's like, it can't be the my bad parenting that led my son to make bad choices like that. It must be his friend who broke up with his girlfriend's fault. That's classic Norman Osborn kind of thing. Redirecting the responsibility at someone else. So I think that will be sort of done in a different way here, which is fine with me.
well, Harry in this has this kind of like creepy bloodshot eye thing going
Yeah.
on. I found myself wondering if it was like the Spider-Man 3 Peter Parker thing where that makeup was just there to tell you that something creepy and evil is going on, or if there's some more to it than that. And I'd like to think that these are potentially a little bit smarter than that because he could already be on drugs.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that they'll do the Spectacular Spider-Man thing where they combine the Goblin serum with the drug thing, where he was taking that serum and it was addictive, and it gave him superpowers at the same time. Um,
I hope that's where they go with that.
yeah, me too. And we do see a little scene of what I think is him in some sort of machine getting like something on him. Like there's a scene where it's like a close up on his face and he's like laying down and he sort of screams. That's very brief in the trailer, so I think that might be him administrating however they do the Goblin serum in this franchise to himself, which would be.
Were you surprised by the sheer amount of story stuff that they're giving us already?
I was actually very surprised. I kind of expected it to be all like villain action stuff, since there's so many villains in this movie.
To like, if you know you're Spider-Man, and what I really like about it is if you're not a big Spider-Man fan, I don't know that the trailer gives anything away for you because a lot of the things we're talking about, you have to have background to even think about, right?
Right, exactly.
And so I think for your average viewer, they're going to look at that and go, okay, it looks it's in the daytime now, so it looks like it might be a more fun movie.
Yeah.
And B, look, multiple supervillains. I mean, I feel like that's what the whole trailer is selling the movie on. Is finally, you know how you always wanted to see a bunch of like lesser Spider-Man villains in a movie. We're doing that, and I feel like that's kind of what it's playing on. But for those of us that know our stuff, they're tipping us off to all kinds of things,
Yeah,
which is just exciting. Like they want the fans to do this. I think that people making superhero movies these days, that's a really smart way to go. Where you like give the fans what they want. They know that we want Easter eggs, and so they give those to us.
oh yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many things in this trailer, like the scene with Gwen dressed in her exact outfit from the Death story, and the scene at the end in the clock tower. It's not on a bridge anymore. It's in a clock tower, but you see Spider-Man straight out of the comics, like shooting the web down the catcher when it catches her and breaks her spine. So I was like, ooh, I mean, I wonder if they're gonna go there. If it's a red herring, who knows? And there's also all this cool stuff with Electro that calls back to story Mark Waid recently did in Amazing Spider-Man, where Electro he uses the power kind of thing that Electro does, and uses it as sort of um, allegory for the fact that the 99% 1% movement, where he sees like nobody has any power and he wants to show people what it's like to wipe that illusion away and show them, look, you can't really affect anything. Let's rise up and take the power back for ourselves. And like the line at the end of the trailer there, where he talks about showing the people a world without power, without mercy, without Spider-Man. It's a small line to go on, but I don't know. I thought it was a good line, and I think that's where they might be going because we see like the city collapsing and things like that, which is very cool.
Yeah, I really appreciate that we're not just seeing a bunch of action; that we're getting a sense of what the movie movie might be about emotionally, thematically, all those sorts of things. And it's the same thing that we got from the Days of Future Past trailer, where we were able to watch that trailer and be like, "Holy crap! Here's what this movie's about." And the Captain America 2 trailer was like that too. It was like all the themes were right there.
Yeah,
Um,
I
and
love the Captain.
I love that, man. It's like we're actually selling movies on what they're about. Yay! And not well. And if you think about it, that's really intelligent marketing because it's not a novelty anymore, right?
Yeah.
Superhero movies, we get them every year. We get 5 or 6 or 25 every year.
Yeah, so they can't sell it on the novelty, like you said, of just a guy being in a costume fighting supervillains. They actually have to sell you on this is going to be worth your time. It's going to tell an interesting story, and
Yeah,
I like that quite a bit. I mean, the Easter eggs that we saw here are obvious, like the Ock arms and like the story stuff. But there's also like little tiny things too that I didn't notice at first that I had to like read articles to figure out. Harry's computer, when he's flipping through that and showing Peter the pictures, there's text on the computer that says Project Venom and the Australian Project. And in the Ultimate Comics, Craven is an Australian hunter guy. And of course, the Venom thing, that's Ultimate Venom straight up, where Richard Parker had this project at Oscorp to develop a cure for cancer. So hints to all that stuff is very cool as well.
yeah. That makes me that makes me wonder if excuse me. That makes me wonder if they're just putting those in there to be kind of like you said, fun Easter eggs where maybe they'll do those down the line, or if they're not setting up things that are more upcoming soon. Because since they just announced they're talking about Sinister Six in Venom movies, I don't see Venom not being in the third movie.
No, me either. At the very least, they'll set up whoever Venom's going to be as being a more important character in the third movie, I would imagine. And who knows if it's going to be Flash? Maybe he has more to do in this movie. We just didn't see him in the trailer. But there are like on the viral marketing sites, there's mentions of Eddie Brock and things like that. But we know they exist in the universe. But whether or not they'll be in the film, who knows? If they'll use Eddie Brock, I don't know. The viral marketing website isn't the best like source to go off of in terms of
Do
like
we
who's
know
in the movies.
do we know how far ahead of the first movie this one is? Like, do we know if he's still in high school or has he gone to college yet?
I
Like,
think they were high school seniors in the first movie, so I would imagine that they're
well,
going to
that's
be at Empire State University in this movie. And that would make sense because, and this is one of the things that I wasn't thinking about, but I think when I was talking to Shades about this, he made a good point. Um, Harry and Peter are supposed to be childhood friends, and Harry's sort of returning. I hope he comes back from Europe because that's where people in Spider-Man comics go when they have a hard time. They just go to Europe and then come back. So I hope that's where he comes back from. But it's kind of weird that in the first movie there's no mention to Harry Osborn being related to the guy that runs this big company that like Peter infiltrates in the first movie. Don't you find that kind of strange?
yeah, that's weird because he goes there and he's got this kind of like wide-eyed awe about Oscorp, and like it's almost exotic or something. And if that was his childhood friend, that doesn't make any
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. So I think he does make a very good point there. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. And
It'd be really funny if he never put two and two together. He's like, "Holy crap, they are spelled the same."
and it would be even stranger, I would imagine, if like Peter had never met Norman before, if they were childhood friends.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's possible, but not likely.
Yeah, exactly. Like I can't see like Peter going on like play dates with Harry and well, I mean, I suppose you could maybe only see Harry's mother. I don't know what they're going to do with her. She died when Harry was younger in the comics, but we'll
Uh,
see.
I'd like to make a an outlandish prediction, if I may,
Sure.
because I don't have anything to go on whatsoever except the except the fact that we know there's been a little bit of talk about Mark Webb and the guy who played Flash Thompson thinking about maybe down the road they would do the Flash Thompson Venom. And in fact, this is less of a prediction, more of just a thing I hope they do.
Mhm.
I hope Flash Thompson gets sent off to war in this movie
Oh, that would be fantastic. I would love that. Yeah.
because I want Eddie Brock to be Venom first, just because Venom is a great supervillain. He's also a
Yeah.
great superhero once you put Flash Thompson in there, but let's not skimp on the villain part. And plus, it would be really strange to do the ultimate version and then it gets given to a guy who's like totally who's like, a good guy and knows what to do with it. I mean, Flash doesn't always
That's
know,
true.
but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he's not just a bad guy. He's not gonna start just like wailing on Spider-Man. He's got his head square on his shoulders, certainly, than Eddie Brock did.
Right.
So let's at least let Eddie Brock be a villain first, and then get it off of him. But you don't want the Flash Thompson Venom unless he's lost his legs, because that's part of what makes it interesting.
I agree. And the only thing that I could see them doing that I think would work really well if they were to skip Eddie Brock, which I agree with you. I'd like to see Eddie Brock first because I like Venom as a villain personally. But it would make a lot of sense if they're not going to give the symbiote to Peter first, for it to imitate Spider-Man's powers if it went on to Flash first because he's Spider-Man's biggest fan. They established that in the first movie.
Yeah, that's
Like,
a good idea.
so it would make sense that like if it's a wish fulfillment thing, that Flash would have a Spider-Man-esque costume, have the webs, and be able to stick to walls and stuff.
But also, I'd love to see the Ultimate Spider-Man version just as a movie and not do much else in that movie, because the whole Peter Parker and Eddie Brock as friends thing, I actually think is kind of more interesting than what they did with it in 616.
Yeah, I can see them doing that. I think the only risk they run is making it this a thing that's too similar to what they did with Harry.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although you could kind of parallel it. I mean, you
Yeah,
could make it Peter Parker is not a good judge of character.
no, it's not. Except for with women. That's the
Right.
only place where he wins.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't understand that. It's like if they're cute girls, he knows when they're not to be messed with and when they are, right?
It's
Like
actually kind of the other way around. Like most of the time, like the girls come on to him because they see that he's a good person. Like
right.
with Gwen and Mary Jane, he's just kind of like taking what he can get because he's a geeky, nerdy kid, and he just happens to luck out because he's a good guy, which
Yeah,
is
but he
nice.
doesn't want anything to do with Black Cat because he knows that's a bad idea.
Well, he does, but for completely different reasons.
That's true. And then of course there's the whole, and I'm getting this from the '90s Spider-Man series, but I'm sure it was similar in the comics, right? The
Mhm.
whole like he doesn't know for a long time that Felicia Hardy is Black Cat, so she has that whole secret identity thing going for her.
I can't remember how they did it initially. I think they did know, like, or at least Black Cat didn't know, like, who he was for a little while because she was sort of only interested in the Spider-Man thing. And then when she found out who he really was, she was like, "Oh, you're boring. You're just like some geeky dude. I don't want to date you."
Let's
But anyway,
so what other villains are you really hoping they're gonna do down the road? I think Craven's gotta happen, especially if they're doing a Sinister Six movie, because I feel like if we've already seen a name drop for Craven, he's gonna be in the initial Sinister Six, right?
I would love to see that. That would be awesome. Well, let's see. Let see. I think a lot of people are when they see the Sinister Six thing coming out of Oscorp are assuming that Green Goblin's going to be in it, but I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, and I'll tell you why in a second. I just want to talk about the roster that could potentially be there. So we've got the cameos of the Octopus and the Vulture arms. So we pretty much know they're going to be in it. You can't do Sinister Six without Doctor Octopus. He's the head honcho, and I'm excited to see what this franchise does with that. That will be really cool. So we get Doctor Octopus, the Vulture, the Lizard, Electro. So that's four already, and then we get two slots. I would imagine either Mysterio, Craven. You could do a number of villains. Mysterio and Craven would be the ones that I ideally like to see because they're big parts of the team in the comics. But I can see like the Sinister Six movie because all of these scientists come out of Oscorp, and from what we've seen, they kind of get screwed over by them. They could be disgruntled and actually be fighting against the Green Goblin. And the fourth movie is Spider-Man and the Sinister Six sort of fighting against the corporation. You know,
Yeah, that's cool.
I don't know if they'll go there, but we'll see. I think that would
Yeah,
be
I think this whole idea of like a corporate villain team is interesting because we haven't seen that in films yet,
no, we
right?
haven't.
I mean, we certainly have had a lot of like superheroes versus big business. That's not new.
No.
But the idea of there's an evil, not just we're fighting an evil villain that came out of a corporation, but the corporation existed to make supervillains.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of fun.
That's a really fun comic book way to do that straight on the nose. Like you're your superhero is going against an evil corporation, but not because it's an evil corporation, because there's this Rhino guy and he's crashing into. I gotta be honest with you, Dan. I think Venom will be in the Sinister Six.
Yeah, that's a good point. He probably will be.
I think they'll go there because the perception is always that Venom is Spider-Man's biggest villain. That and you know that thing that Avi
I was gonna
always
mention that. Yeah, he's the most popular character.
the most popular character, which is not true, but but still, that is somewhat of the perception. I feel like Venom has, in a way, the Wolverine thing going on, where there was a period there where we couldn't really tell a Spider-Man story without Venom being involved somehow,
That's fair.
and I kind of think that Sony is the fact that they've already announced a Venom movie. They're banking, I think, really hard on the popularity of Venom and on trying to milk that character after it didn't work very well with Spider-Man 3, or at least, I mean, that movie made money, but I mean, like they didn't continue on past that. So I think they're saying, well, we don't want to miss an opportunity because people weren't real happy with how it was done that time. So second time around, we can capitalize on this. And I also think that just because they've announced they want to do Venom and Sinister Six does not preclude the notion of Venom being in the Sinister Six movie.
That's very true. Um, and I think in terms of like the Venom movie, I don't know if they announced like which one's coming out first, but I think it's very likely that the Venom movie, just because they have all these villains to establish, and like the only big Venom villain is Carnage, and I don't necessarily see them doing Carnage in the first Venom movie. I think it's very likely that you see Venom fight against one of Spider-Man's big villains in that movie, and then they introduce him into the Sinister Six team later.
Yeah, I hope that's what they do because the Venom Carnage rivalry is really fun, and I'd love to see that played out on screen. And also, it seems like you have to do Venom as kind of an anti-hero, the whole lethal protector thing, because this idea of let's do villain movies without Spider-Man makes no sense to me. Why did we announce a Sinister Six movie? Like, I would have figured that was that was Amazing Spider-Man 3. Like, I really figured that's what we were building to, and then they're like, I just, Dan, feel like Sony is trying to make this out like they have a shared Spider-Man universe, which is really silly to me because they don't have like other properties. All they have is Spider-Man.
It is really funny.
And so they're pretending like, look, we're like Marvel. We have no. You have Spider-Man and Spider-Man's villains, and that's what you have. Now, I'm not saying you can't do spin-offs and you can't do solo films, but other things have done this before. We need to quit pretending like no one's ever made spin-offs just because Marvel has a shared universe.
Right, and like I think the more apt analogy would be them trying to think that they're like Fox with the X-Men. But the thing there is like X-Men is not a low-key like singular character focus kind of thing. There's a lot of people. Whereas like Spider-Man, there's not a lot of other like superheroes in just like Spider-Man comics that I think could support their own movie. Like I don't see a Black Cat movie succeeding in the box office at all.
I don't either, and frankly, I think that people would be let down if you did a Black Cat movie and Spider-Man wasn't in it in some capacity, because I feel like he is the center of his own universe. With the X-Men, you have a whole bunch of protagonists, so no one person is the center of that universe except for arguably Wolverine.
Yeah.
And then you go to Marvel, and each of these characters individually already got their own films first that could have, with the exception of all the Avengers talk, been their own solo universes, and then you pull them together. With this, I don't think that any potential protagonist that could carry their own movie, even villains, could really just sprout up and have their own movie before they were introduced in a Spider-Man movie. You're not going to do the Scarlet Spider movie. You're not going to do the Scarlet Spider movie, for instance, before he pops up in a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they're doing a smart thing, like you said, in that I think all of these elements are going to be introduced in the Spider-Man movies before they spin them off. Hopefully, I'm hoping that happens.
Hope so.
And
Because I just think that would be silly. And now that's not to say that the Sinister Six movie you couldn't have a couple characters that were introduced there. But Dan, who would they fight? What is the point of that?
I think it would be like the Oscorp Corporation as a corporate entity, or um, Norman Osborn himself. Who knows?
Is that why you think Green Goblin probably won't be part of the Sinister Six?
That's why I don't think he will be. Yeah, I mean, you could even have him fight somebody like Alistair Smythe. The Spider Slayers. You could do a number of things, which would be very cool.
Let me
And I
ask you
think,
this: do you want to see that movie?
I mean, I think you're asking the wrong guy. Yeah, I'd definitely go to that movie. I love the Spider-Man villains, but like, I
No,
don't
I'm
know.
not saying you wouldn't go to it. I'm just saying that at the very least, could Spider-Man fight the Six before they get their own movie?
I think you'll see him fight them in a movie.
Okay.
But I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to them getting their own movie to develop their characters for them to make the fight more of a interesting thing when Spider-Man finally does get to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I could see that. I just think it could be really strange. We don't. I mean, it's
It
funny
could,
too.
yeah.
It's funny too because Vince and I a couple weeks ago just put out a Geeks Not Nerds where we talked about the idea of solo villain films. Like, should villains get their own movies without superheroes in them? And then lo and behold, this is actually happening now. It looks like.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting move by Sony because I think this is something that, for better or for worse, people have been asking for a long time. People are always like, why don't they just make a Joker movie or whatever, something
Yeah.
like that. Which I think if you're going to do it with any sort of villains and make them the protagonist of the movie, because I think you and Vince talked a little bit about how you could do someone that's a serial killer-esque villain like the Joker or Zaz, and sort of make the movie about how the Joker affects normal people as he's going around and taking victims, and he's not necessarily like the psychological or character study focus of the movie necessarily. I mean, you could sort of do a character study of him, but it would be like not the kind of movie I would think you want to sell to like this crowd of people, because like the superhero movies, you want to be blockbusters, you want everybody to go see them. If you make a character study of the Joker, that's going to be like the most violent thing in the world, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's not going to be a real accessible movie. That won't be for everybody. And so I feel like your Sinister Six movie, first of all, that would be tough to do a character study because there's six of them.
well, I mean, it depends on like which ones they're going to be focusing on, because you see, I have a feeling this movie is going to be the paralleling character study of Electro and Harry Osborn to some degree. But I still think that Electro is going to be the main focus of the movie because that's what they're marketing on. The subtitle is Rise of Electro in other countries, which I wish it was like that here. I mean, it's not the best subtitle, but at least they got one.
Yeah,
So like
I
if
still wish Amazing just wasn't in the title. Like,
Yeah, I suppose so. But you got to keep in mind they're saving the other adjectives for the other reboots, right?
yeah, probably so. But given how much I know what you're saying, but given how much they seem to be drawing, at least from what we can see so far, we don't know, but at least as much as they seem to be drawing from the spectacular TV show, boy, that should be the title of
Oh, I'm
this.
with you. I would have loved if that was the sequel in a world where Sony wasn't going to perpetually reboot Spider-Man until it's not commercially viable anymore. But anyway,
In a world, in
my
a
point
world.
is about the Sinister Six characters and how they're the ones to do it with. I think out of all the supervillain rogues galleries, is they are people with sympathetic causes. They just go about doing those things in the wrong ways. I mean, it's they kind a lot of the Spider-Man villains kind of have the Magneto kind of thing going on. It's not as like grandiose and as necessarily interesting as Magneto in the comics, but I feel like if you make some changes, which they're doing with Electro in here, which seems promising, you can make them just as interesting. And Harry talks about how they want to change the world, and like if these people see a problem, they want the world to be changed. changed because a big corporate entity is controlling everything and taking advantage of people. That's a sympathetic cause I can get behind. But like you just see these people not going about it the right way. I think that would be an interesting kind of movie to see.
Yeah, where it's sort of this tale about these people with good intentions, but how the world crumbles beneath their feet.
Yeah.
At the same time, I have a hard time imagining that movie being especially entertaining unless it was kind of a comedy.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I would imagine that some of the characters are going to be comic relief. Like, from what I've heard and seen, Rhino is going to serve that role from what he's in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So we'll have to see where they go with, depending on what characters.
You know, Eric, and I think this is somewhat wishful thinking because I know what Eric has always wanted from a Spider-Man movie.
Yeah.
But Eric thinks that Rhino is somewhat of a red herring. He thinks that Rhino is not going to get a very large part in this, and that he's going to be taken out in like 5 seconds.
Oh, yeah, that's what they're doing. They already said that.
Oh, have they really? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Because Eric always said, and I always agreed with this, that you had all those like you go back to the '90s show again, and you had all those episodes where Spider-Man would fight some like C-list bad guy for like a minute and a half, and then the episode would be about something else, because there's villains everywhere, and Spider-Man would just take out people,
Right.
and then there'd be an actual story. And he's like, and Eric and I always thought, well, why can't you do that in a movie? Like you ought to have, because you can get more of characters that we've heard of in there if you let them be as minor as they were.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Rhino does have some dimension later on. In the comics that I really like the character, but I don't necessarily need to have like Rhino on the Sinister Six. Like there's villains I like more than Rhino. And Paul Giamatti said that his role in this movie is small, but he's contracted to be in further ones. So we'll have to see how big of a role he takes moving forward, I guess.
Well, and he could be. The thing is, I like the idea of introducing characters like this.
Yeah, exactly.
He could be taken out in 5 seconds, but then still be in the Sinister Six later.
Yeah,
That
exactly. That would be very cool.
well, anything else you wanted to talk about that was in the trailer, or any predictions you have moving forward?
There was one thing that I did think was a little strange, and we'll have to see how it plays in the movie because they could have easily recut it and everything. But like, I think it's kind of strange that they make this big deal about how Gwen's like, it worries me a lot when my dad goes out every night with a gun strapped to his hip and puts his life on the line, and she's like, "Hey, were you getting shot at by machine guns earlier?" And Peter's like, "Yeah, I was," and she's like, "Haha, that's awesome." That
Yeah,
was a little weird.
the thing is, I want I'm with you, but I also think it's immediately hilarious and makes them more fun
Yeah,
because it's
I like the
the
characterization and
exact
stuff. Yeah,
opposite of what they did with Mary Jane in the Raimi
that's very
movies,
true.
which always irritated me. So it's kind of fun to have a level-headed enough character with her that says, okay, if I'm dating this guy, I know what I'm getting myself into.
That's true. I wasn't
And
thinking about it that way. You're
yes, you're right, but she is less sympathetic if she agrees to be with this guy and won't take him for everything he
That's
is.
very true. And that's
So
that's classic Gwen. Like whenever anybody, writes Peter Parker with his like dream life, Gwen's always the one that he's married to, the one that takes him for what he is, completely. Not that Mary Jane doesn't too, but Gwen is sort of like the holy grail of Spider-Man love interests, I suppose.
see, I can also see it as somewhat of like diffusing tension and being kind of a defense mechanism where in the back of her mind, of course she's scared for him, and she's got to know that psychologically there's a big reason, if we want to psychoanalyze her, there's a big reason that she's attracted to Peter Parker, and that's played with in the first movie.
Mhm.
She's he reminds her of her father, and that's a major psychology that I think a lot of people, men and women, go
Yeah,
through.
that's
Where
so Freudian.
yeah, where people who remind you of one of your parents, usually of the opposite gender, that's who you're attracted to, and so he's always putting his life on the line, and she always saw her father as a hero, so she wants to be with a hero. Of course, that makes sense.
Yeah, and that provides something that's a common ground between the two of them too, because that's what Peter's defense mechanism is for fear, is joking and being sarcastic. So yeah, that makes sense.
And that's why we can buy these two people together. I mean, I instantly liked them as a couple in the first movie.
Oh, me too. I'm very pleased with Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone in general. Like I think they were I mean I was a little disappointed that Emma Stone wasn't Mary Jane initially because she seems like the kind of personality to play her, but I think she plays Gwen very well. She's a little bit different than comic book Gwen, but I think I like the Gwen in these movies, and Andrew Garfield is just straight off the page Peter Parker to me in a lot of ways.
I think you're right that that line does seem a little bit strange out of context, but I would like to think that in context it will make perfect sense.
Yeah, I hope so. And that's the thing that we have to keep in mind too. Like I saw a lot of people saying things like, I didn't like that this was in the trailer because of all these speculative reasons that I can see it not working in context. I'm trying to be positive and thinking that they will work in context, but we're kind of doing the same thing, like just watching a 2 minute trailer and being like, "This is what will be in the movie." I have no idea. I'm hoping that those things that they do are there, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, here's the
I
thing.
just the trailer got me really excited.
Yeah, I always hesitate to do videos like this on trailers, and I mean on movies that haven't come out yet, and like I do them. I'm doing them more and more, but with the idea of keep in mind that we haven't seen the movie yet, so we're not reviewing the thing before it comes out. And also, I don't review trailers. I like to look at the trailer and try to guess because I think that's fun. To say what do I think might happen or what would I like to see happen and see if I'm right when it comes out. But yeah, I don't want to start dogging on things that are there and be like, that's terrible because many of the things that we have to go on, we saw for all of 2.5 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And oh, one of the things we didn't talk about at all that I kind of wanted to mention, it just popped in my head. I love Aunt May in this trailer. Sally Fields is awesome. The fact that she's like keeping secrets from Peter and he's keeping a secret from her, like I don't know, I love that relationship. It's awesome.
Well, I'm glad she's just got stuff to do.
Yeah, exactly.
And that she's not just there to make like really vague suggestions about what Peter should do with his life, you
Or
know.
make him wheat cakes because that's a classic Aunt May thing too.
Uh, well, Dan, unless you've got anything else, I think that's everything I wanted to talk about.
I think so. Overall, I am excited for the future of Spider-Man films. I hope everything pans out as well as Sony is hoping it is, and they've got some good creative talent involved. I mean, the guy that's show running the Daredevil show that I talked to you about earlier, he's writing the Sinister Six movie. So, booyah!
Oh,
Should be.
cool. Oh, okay, so those have gotten more of the green light than I realized they had.
Yeah, and the weird thing about the Venom one is they said Orci and Kurtzman are writing that, and I guess one of them is tapped to direct it as well, which will be
What?
interesting.
Have they ever directed
I
anything?
don't know.
Whoa, that's gonna be strange.
Yeah, hopefully it works a little bit better than what happened with David Goyer and Blade Trinity. I'm not saying that like all writers, that have never directed anything before and make a superhero movie automatically makes it bad, but I mean, I don't know. That's just what immediately popped into my mind when
Well, I'm gonna speculate that it's gonna be Kurtzman directing over Orsi.
I can't
And
remember which one it is. They mentioned it in the article, but
oh, did they actually say who?
yeah.
Here, the reason I thought that is because I read an article the other day that said that the third Star Trek movie is going to be co-written by Orsi, but Kurtzman isn't involved in it.
Oh,
It
interesting.
makes me think that they might have tapped him to direct because maybe he's not working on Star Trek because he doesn't have time.
Oh, okay. That would make some sort of sense.
Yeah, but I don't know. I didn't. I guess I didn't read the article you read. So anyway.
Yeah, I'm sorry I came unprepared.
Okay, clearly I did too. Well, anyway, everybody, thanks as always for listening, and those were our thoughts about what we think might happen and would like to see happen in the upcoming Amazing Spider-Man 2 and further Spider-Man films. Let us know what you would like to see happen in these movies in the comments, and Dan and I are going to be with you again later this week with a vault on on more issues of Simonson's Thor. We're gonna do 10 this time. Yeah, 10 issues
Yea,
of
verily, we
Simonson's.
will journey to Asgard.
So join us for that, and also join Dan. I feel like you spend all your time on my channel now.
it, it, it
Everybody
is
join.
a good amount of time, but it's a fun time. So, you know.
Everybody join Dan and I also Thursday night, as always, for our live comic review show, and you might have a chance to win some digital comics.
Yay! Oh, and one last thing that I want to happen in this movie. I want a goofy title sequence that says in color, like the '67 cartoon. That would be awesome.
That would be great. That'll never happen.
It won't, but I can hope and dream and edit it in later.
Well, anyway, thanks again for listening. From Captain
God
Logan,
damn.
we'll see you later.